Hi friends, good morning. We're coming to you again from Oklahoma City today with the fourth video in the series of celebrating 70 years of ministry with the Reverend David L. Johnson. Today's segment is Channelview years, 1957 to 1967, one of the most significant periods of Dr. David's life and ministry, and so at this time we're going to go ahead and bring him in and ask some questions of him this morning. Morning, Dad. How you doing?
Morning.
Great. So you moved to Channelview from Wharton in 1957, and the reason you took that church was because somewhat strategic, right? It was out on the east side of town, and what else was going on?
Well, it was actually out in the county, outside the limits of Houston, and a growing community, refineries, all refineries.
I see.
People were working out in there, and it was growing in that way.
And I remember steel mills too. Some of the guys in the church worked for the steel mills.
Right.
And, Interstate 10 was being built at the time. It didn't even exist.
That's right. You're right.
So the people moving in, the community growing, perfect opportunity for a dynamic growing church there. In fact, the church, if I remember right, Channelview built its first high school in the late 50s.
Yes.
A couple of years after you guys moved there. Weren't you involved in something to do with the schools there?
Well, I substituted in the junior high and high school pretty consistently among a church that, a school that size. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
There were a lot of needs for substitute teachers. Sometimes it was a day, sometime a week. One Texas history class, I worked 6 weeks. The teacher who was to teach that died, and the principal asked me to teach until they found another teacher.
And of course, they gave you great connections in the community. You got to know the people, got to know the teachers, and that kind of thing.
I enjoyed that very much.
And then there were a lot of other things. That was a very active period of ministry for you. You started working the football games on the side. I remember many Friday Night Lights, going with you to different ball games at different places. Talk some about that.
Well, it was interesting to get involved in that. And at one point, I joined the can't think of the word.
The Football Officials Association.
Yes, in charge of that.
Okay.
Assigning games to other officials.
Okay. And
I did that for about 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
And then we worked Thursday night, Friday night, and sometimes Saturday night on the varsity games.
And another thing I remember is there was a lot of YMCA activity. I'm not sure I don't remember exactly what it was. I was pretty young at the time, but tell us about that.
Well, we did our lifeguard training there, and the ministers would meet there every Monday morning, and we'd play volleyball and then swim. That was our day off, and we did that for years.
I remember as a very young boy going with you on some of those mornings to the Y. What was the purpose of the preachers taking the YMCA training?
That was when they taught us how to be lifeguards, train us for lifeguards.
And then you took the training into the summer camps?
Yes, we sure did.
Tell about that a little bit.
Well, there were all sorts of church summer camps going on, and the 9 of us then were available to always be there to fill in.
Wow, that's great. So you guys rotated and did those kinds of things.
Yes, sure did.
Something else that sticks in my mind is the space program was really spinning up in the 1960s. President Johnson, who was from Texas, was in the White House in a position to direct funding and attention down to Texas. You visited NASA a lot, right? And you wrote for one of the local papers. What paper was that?
Market Street Sentinel.
Okay.
But they were suburban paper for all of Houston.
I see, for the east side of Houston. Yeah. Because Market Street, if I remember, was the old way into Houston.
That's correct.
Before the highway was built.
That is right.
Kind of ran along the San Jacinto River and the ship channel. Another aspect of your ministry, and I remember Larry Warren and Coondog Warren, if anybody's watching out there, the family memories there. You did a radio broadcast.
Yes, every week. I sure did.
What was the name of that? Christian Insight?
Christian Insight, and it dealt with world events, the things that were happening in the world.
You know, I remember many late nights after church, we'd head over there and on a Sunday night, and you'd do the broadcast at what, 10 o'clock or something like that?
Something like that.
It was pretty late at night.
And we also recorded through the week and played it Sunday nights.
Okay, that makes sense too. Other things you did, you published a weekly newsletter for the church, and that was in a time when churches didn't always do that kind of thing.
That's correct.
but
That's
you
correct.
innovated that into the Channelview Church.
Yes.
And I remember many a Saturday afternoon huffing the duplicator fluid, the mimeograph fluid. For those of you of a certain age, you probably remember the smell of the mimeograph machine, whether it's at school or at church. That's really fun. Another thing you did was a building project.
Yes.
Talk about the building project.
Well, the old church had been moved to build a new church, and the old church was very old, and we needed an educational building in its place. So we had a building program, built an ultra-modern facility there for Christian education, not just Sunday school, but other classes that we met in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that enhanced the church property to have it there.
And what year was that? Do I remember 1964?
Yes.
It was early 60s, I know.
Yes.
And if I remember right, that building is still in use today, right?
It is still in use today.
That's great.
They have built another sanctuary and turned the old sanctuary into fellowship hall,
Mm-hmm.
but that building is still there as a classroom.
I remember going by there a few years ago, and there's a gym now, a big building where the parsonage used to be.
Yes,
is
yes.
now a gym, and they bought the lot. The family next door bought them out, and
Yes.
so the gym takes up that whole space where the
Sure
parsonage
does.
and the Story family, if I remember.
That's right. That is
Used to
correct.
live next door. Another aspect of your ministry that's actually been ongoing, it started probably more in Channelview because there were more young people there, but you've wound up marrying how many couples, you think?
Probably 50 or 55.
Well, Mama Helen says more like over 100.
Oh, you mean in my whole
In
ministry?
your whole
Oh,
ministry.
yes, it would be over 100. Yeah.
That's great. And you've got notable here that 4 of the couples have now been married more than 50 years, right?
That we know
That's exciting. Well, folks, I think that pretty much wraps us up for the Channelview years. We're going to be right back with video number 5, and that is going to be an entire segment dedicated to Dad's book, Vietnam as I Saw It. So we hope that you'll come back and join us for video number 5, Vietnam as I Saw It, and we'll be right back with that. Thanks a lot. Until then, what do we say, Dad?
of. Keep stroking.